Be honest. Have you ever let a fear of criticism, particularly online criticism, stop you from doing something you really wanted to do or that you really, really believed in? I was recently joined by my friend, Dorothy May, singer, songwriter, comedian, and creator of the Humour Experiment, and we had a great chat about dealing with online criticism as a woman who does stand-up comedy, and the importance of sticking to one's personal core values in the face of harassment and criticism, and being able to find and share joy within that context. So stick around and check out our conversation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Oh, it's so nice to see you, and I'm so excited for this
Nice
chat.
to see you too. Yeah, me too. I'm excited about this little setup you've got back there. It looks so professional.
Thank you. It's almost like you helped me design it or something.
Yeah, I'm good at critiquing interior design.
Yeah. No, I'm loving it. So this will be my setup from now on. I can be much sexier for my video calls. Thank you, Leslie.
You're very welcome. All right, so who are you?
Who am I? Okay, my easiest introduction is I am a singer-songwriter, comedian, and coach. And that kind of covers most things.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your
I'm
name?
Dorothy. I'm Dorothy May. Oh my God, who am I? Yes, my name's Dorothy.
Yes,
My friends call me
you?
Dot, so you're welcome to call me Dot, listeners. Leslie calls me Dot. You're fine. I actually love when people have their own way of connecting to me. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we love those like little pet names and nicknames, because it's personal and it brings it to life. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm buzzing.
Excellent.
I'm high vibe. I've had a coffee.
That's great. Yeah, I'm still working on mine.
Oh, I had that sad
Isn't that a
moment
cute
though when
cup?
I got to that look, take life. Oh, I love that so much. Yes, motivation.
This was given to me by some of my students at QUT several years ago.
I love when things have that sentimental something. I've got a similar story. I'm wearing a couple of rings here that I gifted myself from a gift voucher that I was given from, I used to teach aqua aerobics years ago to like lots of old ladies. I love them so much. I had like 20 nanas. I've never done this before. Got myself like some lovely little jewelry. And I'm so glad I did that because, that was like 9 years ago now. And I still can wear them and think of them. And yeah, I love doing things like that.
That's sweet.
It is. I'm getting a bit sentimental right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Nothing to worry about.
So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. And yeah, the main reason I wanted to talk to you about this particular topic is because I have such respect for the way you operate. And I know that we first connected through the activism community. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I really feel about networking, even in a business sense, is I like to network from the inside out. People who are already in my life, who I already have similar values to, who I already respect and admire, and then see what we can create together. Mm-hmm. But one thing I really admire about the way you operate is you're constantly, well, first of all, you're a creative powerhouse. You kind of do it all, don't you? You're doing the comedy, you're doing the singing, you make great online content, but you're also constantly sticking your neck out over and over and over again. And you're constantly showing your vulnerable side and showing how that is helping you to grow as a creator. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to do. And you're also not quiet about your political beliefs, which I really appreciate, especially anyone working in a coaching capacity. A lot of people like to like to play nice and stay really, quiet about things. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
And that takes guts, especially when you're working in a creative capacity full time, doing these things to risk your livelihood over the things you believe in. There's a lot to be said for that. One thing that you have talked about a lot, especially recently, is just, or I guess pretty consistently since I've known you, is being a woman who does comedy and the kinds of slings and arrows that come with that. Would you say that's correct?
Yes. First off, though, I just want to acknowledge that I am so grateful today that you would provide such a beautiful and generous and kind mirror to the best parts of me. Thank you. Because I think that, honestly, that when we can do that for each other, it gives us so much strength and power. Like, you've just reflected the best part of me back to me and helped illuminate that further so that I can do more of this work. So thank you. I do not take that for granted 1 second. I mean, it speaks volumes for who you are in the world and what you can, what you're. Yeah.
You've been popping a lot of flack for being who you are and how you are so openly and so boldly.
And I feel like I've had a big learning curve in the recent, week or so, even last couple of weeks, where I'm learning a deep acceptance for the fact that this is what my work entails. And it's not that I desire to cop it in a negative way, but I'm realizing that with my dream of being able to kind of raise my flag and be a bit of a beacon for people like myself, that also relies on me sticking out from the crowd to gain attention. And when you do that, there are things that come with that, and they're not always things that you want, but you have to weigh it up and just go, if I'm being honest with myself and I know that this is the reality of what my path entails, am I willing to keep going on this path even though that's part of the package deal, And for me, I am 100% willing to go on this path, even if that's a part of the package, because the joys and the incredibleness that comes out of living my truth on my path is just like so much greater than those little moments where I experience the cons. And I think the trickiest part in those moments is when you're in the thick of it, where someone's projecting something onto you that doesn't feel good. The challenge with that is really understanding the actual size of that, and in the moment not getting caught up feeling like it's your whole world, when you know that your whole world is made up of so much goodness. So, and I think what I've realized from recent incidences dealing with trolls is that I was just thinking, when I think of the word troll now, I'm going to think of those troll dolls with the funny hair, because it makes them less intimidating. But so now whenever I say troll, I want you to have that identification too. But when dealing with trolls, sometimes I guess when people feel that overwhelmed that they have to project that kind of hate onto you, when we feel it, particularly as like sensitive, soft artists or creators, it feels so visceral. The feeling of it because we are so open and receptive and ready to love and to feel everything for our creativity, it means when that negative stuff comes in, it can feel so overwhelming. So sitting with the feeling and that wash that's washed over you of like whether it's hate or shame or just deep sadness and anger, whatever those people are projecting onto you, that's got to be the hardest part about it, is just like swimming through that ocean with them. Because I think that oftentimes trolls think that you don't feel it with them. But you do.
Yeah.
So the difference is just the mental process that follows, I think, the healthy mental process that follows as opposed to the unhealthy mental process that may follow for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you some more about that. But first, can you tell us, like, when did you start doing comedy? Why are you so passionate about it and about getting more women involved as well?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know, I could talk for years because literally I've been doing this for years, you know, so I have to try and pick the best parts to share. I've been doing comedy. I think I probably started doing some stand-up open mic nights when I was maybe around 25. And now I forget how old I am, but I think I'm about 32.
32?
I'm almost, or maybe I'm almost
31.
I think I'm 31, but I'm almost 32. And I'm such a like plan ahead gal, but I'm like, okay, be ready for this already. But
I just want to skip ahead.
But we're already there. But before I did stand up open mics though, I did have a strong background in performance craft that came far before that. Which I think a lot of people actually aren't even aware of. Sometimes I think about like my experience and I'm like, I don't even think people know what I've actually done to get here. Like, I think that's part of the issue, but I've never been one to like drop my resume in everyone's ear when I meet them. I've never been that person. I'm like, like, I'd rather just people see me and receive me and then let what I do speak for itself. But anyways, so did some open mics around 25. But before that, I'd studied musical theatre at the VCA from age, you know, was 3 years degree for the degree. So 19, 20, 21. And I performed my whole life. So also part of the music theatre course, we had like electives as well available to us. So I did things like script writing and acting for camera too. And got to do lots of improvisation, and I love improvisation. So I was already getting a sense for what I was curious about, what I wanted to play with. And when we did improv or when we did stuff that was kind of off the cuff and prepped for the class and sharing, I did really like making people laugh. I feel like there weren't many moments where I got to explore that, but when I did, I kind of had something light up inside me. I love that feeling of just being myself and people laughing at me. So good. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think, and even as a kid, you know, I feel like my training began when I was a kid, as it does for all of us, because kids are natural clowns. And one of my favorite things was to just be an idiot to get my mum to laugh. It was honestly the best feeling in the world. So yeah, and as a young kid too, I did notice that when I could make, like, if my mother was sad and I could make her laugh, that was what I lived for. I loved being able to pull someone out of one emotional state and go into and lift them into something that felt better. And then I got to do some work as well several years ago with the Starlight Children's Foundation, and I got to do some clowning for kids through that job, and that was beautiful. That was a beautiful, like, full circle moment to be able to be an adult cheering up kids by just being a goofball that needed, you know, kids that need to have that respite from whatever challenge they're going through. So yeah, I love it. Did that answer your question, or did I get on a tangent?
That answered part one of the question for sure. And I love the thing you said about like being a kid and making your mom laugh and that being the best thing, because I see so much of that in my own kid, in my daughter. And I'm like, she's 6, but she's got such a sense of comedic timing and of sarcasm, and she's got this wit that has made me wonder often. I'm like, I wonder if she's ever going to go into comedy as a career. And then I think about like the world of comedy and all the pros and cons and the pitfalls and stuff, especially for women. And I'm like, you know what? This Dotty May lady, she better keep doing this work to kind of try to rinse up some of those negative elements out of the scene, because I want something good for my kid if she does decide to enter that space. Oh,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That means a lot, actually.
So how do women experience the comedy scene differently, especially locally here in Brisbane? Because that's mostly where you operate, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, when I was trying out some open mics and things when I was in my like mid-20s, I was in a tricky spot personally anyway. I was dealing with some really full-on life challenges at that time. And so I definitely know that played into colouring my experience. However, as a woman, I felt quite reduced. I felt like I couldn't really access my full power in the feminine in those spaces. I was satisfied with it for a short period of time. I loved being able to celebrate watching other people do their thing and getting up and trying things. But I remember a real big turning point for me was when I got up in front of one of these like pub crowds, and I was like, I'm just going to try something different. I'm going to try what all the bros do. And I got up and I was, you know, making masturbation jokes and swearing and, you know, doing what the boys do. And I was just testing it out. I was like, I wonder how this will go. And the audience were cackling themselves. And I got off and I felt so empty. And I was like, that was not me up there. I felt like I was the court jester, just kind of like selling myself for whatever I could get, like the scraps in the room. And that was, there were lots of turning points for me, but that was a big one. And I'm not ashamed of that, because in that moment I was searching for the insight that I needed to get to where I am today. And in that moment, I was looking for it. I was like, oh, okay, I can put on this bro-y act and see what happens, see if it works. And it did. And I was like, but do I want to be that? And then as I started to like want to branch out more into saying what me as Dorothy wants to say in the world and how I view things and who I want to be, who I just am already, I just found that I wasn't getting the same reception. And in part that was also to do with like the other comics in the space, because oftentimes when you're doing these open mics, you know, like if you've got a quiet night, everyone in the crowd's just open mic comics. And if you've got like 90%, you know, dudes that are making those kinds of bro-y jokes that don't have the slightest interest in the female experience, you're going to bomb. And I just was bombing all the time. I just, like, no one was laughing. No one thought it was funny. And I'd watch women try and be women up there, like try and actually talk about their real experience in a comedic sense. And I'd watch them bomb. And I'd be like, they're really intelligent and witty. How? Why? And so it took me a long time to realize it's about your demographic. And if it's about your peers in the scene who make up so much of the audience oftentimes. And it's also about the demographic. And if all of the comedy rooms are built to cater to a demographic that's not yours, then it doesn't matter how funny you are. If they're not agreeing with your viewpoint, they're not going to find you funny. Or if they're not even open enough to receive your viewpoint, they're not going to find you funny. So it's kind of like what I liken it to now when I'm talking to my peers and other comedians that are maybe like struggling with wrestling with this whole thing of like, but I need to be true to myself, but then that's not what's resonating in crowds, and you know, that whole kind of tug of war. I say, if you're a classical musician and you rock up to play at a heavy metal concert, you are going to get booed off stage. You've got to perform for your demographic. And the challenge for women is, or if you're a heavy metal musician and you rock up to play with the symphony orchestra, you may also get booed off stage.
Well,
I don't know. Sometimes, you know, art
classier
collabs,
crowds don't boo,
but it's
do they? They have some other gesture.
Look, I'm not saying that you can't cross worlds and that there aren't already crossovers. But what I'm trying to say in general is, you know, you got to know your audience. Who are you performing for? And I think the challenge is for more diverse performers with a different worldview, who have a different sort of background, performers that, like, you know, women, for example, is that if you're trying to perform for a demographic that's not built for you, you're going to feel like shit. And straight away, you're going to be at a disadvantage to the people that are performing for their demographic. Because they're going to get up and they're going to be like, butts, and people are just going to lose their shit. And you've got something really intelligent to say.
My shit.
But it won't matter because, you know, they're going to get up and it's their demographic. And then so what you're going to feel every time in those rooms is that you're inferior and you're less than and your work's less worthy. And I got sick of that. My self-esteem took such a shredding. And I was like, this is just stupid. And I'm not one to walk away from situations if there's something beneficial in it, you know, like I'll always weigh it up. I'll be like, what are the pros, what are the cons of staying in this environment? But I was looking at it, I was like, I'm not even getting paid for these gigs. I'm not even like ever going to get paid because people in these spaces don't want what I'm selling. So this is stupid, you know. And then on top of that, I felt the challenges that, you know, all women feel from time to time, being a woman, you know, from smaller moments of misogyny to larger. And, you know, as a person, as a human, outside of being a comedian, I don't have time for that shit. I grew out of it. I realized I'm worth more than that. And I realized that I don't tolerate that stuff, not even for an opportunity. You could pay me and you could give me opportunities at that point, but like, it's still not worth it because I want to love myself and I want to help other people love themselves. So this is where like the human values start to like take precedent over whatever your creative dreams and goals are. So anyway, the Humour Experiment was born out of that because I was like, I can fix this. Yeah, it's going to take time, but I can do this for me and I can do this for other people. We can create a new way of doing things. I'll never be able to change that space that already exists. And you know what? As long as they don't want to hurt anyone, you can cater to the bros. You know, let's have that space. That's fine. Whatever. That's not my business. It's not my business to worry about what other people are doing. But I have a right to create a space for me and for people like.
Yeah. And that's something that I love about what you're doing with the Humour Experiment, because you said, like, you identified a problem. It was these rooms, the demographic that filled these rooms, the kinds of things that the demographics responded to. And you said, okay, what is the solution? Change the friggin' room.
Yeah.
It's not about changing like your values or becoming someone else. It's like, well, that would be the easy thing.
Yeah.
But what's going to be much, much harder? Actually changing something within the demographic. So let's do that thing.
Yeah.
And
yes, it's
that takes
harder,
a
but
lot of guts.
But I did like one set, Leslie. I did one 5-minute set where I talked about dicks and butts. And I was so freaking bored.
Mm.
Like, this
Exactly.
isn't my dream. That is so boring. This is not why I signed up to be an artist. I signed up to be an artist because I love ruffling feathers and I love challenging people and I love being the reason that people grow and I love talking about the hard things.
Yes, and that's something that I can
That is
relate
why I do it.
And that's something I can relate to so hard, especially as a life coach, as someone working full-time in the personal development industry. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I could sit up here and capitalize on my very Latin sounding last name and my Peruvianness and say like, oh, you know what? I'm a shaman. And
you can be a shaman if you want.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, I could walk around pretending to be a shaman and perform all these like cacao ceremonies, or tell people to just ask the universe for everything and keep asking and asking and asking and not do any work and just expect things to come to them. And I'd probably make millions and millions of dollars. But that is not what I signed up for.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, that is not the change that I want to see in this industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see a lot of people that do that. They change themselves to have like those little moments of external wins.
Mm.
But is it a win if it's not your calling? If it's not that thing that lit up that little child inside of you?
Exactly.
What's the point?
As long as you're walking an authentic path, you don't have to battle with that feeling at the end of it, like, oh, should I have done it differently? It's like if you travel this whole path doing things someone else's way and still fell flat, it's like, oh, maybe I should have done it my way from the start.
Yeah.
It's like, well, just do it your way from the start.
The other thing too is it's like, do you want to just play the same game as everybody plays and be one in what are my numbers, Dorothy? I'm doing the creative brain. I'm like, I can't number. Oh, wait, what are my numbers? Do you want to be like the 1 in 10 person, or do you want to be the 1 in a million person? There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not even hard math. That's just where I'm at creatively. Like, I park my car and I never know where I park it. And it doesn't matter. Even if in that moment I'm like, remember, I'm this person. I have to take a picture, write a note where I go to actually remember where my car is. Otherwise...
there are apps to remember where you parked your car.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Know how I know?
Oh my God, I need that. I need help. I need a chauffeur and a PA, and I just need someone to mother me so I can be a creative child.
Aww.
Goals. We'll get there.
Nice. Okay. So with the Humour Experiment, with everything that you do in comedy, you also run courses relating to like comedic devices and performance confidence and things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me how that's been. Yeah.
It's so interesting because there are so many layers to that onion that we need to peel to ready somebody for an experience that I offer. And I believe in this so much, and I've committed to this long term because I know that when people are finally ready for this experience, it's going to blow their mind. And it's one of the coolest things that they'll ever do. I wouldn't be able to say that if I hadn't lived it myself. Like, I've built something over the last, 4 years that I needed to answer my problems.
Yeah.
My deep soul challenges. You know, it comes from the deepest part of me.
When someone sees the words stand-up comedy course, what do you think what are the first impressions people get of that sort of thing?
You know what? I think probably lots of negative connotations potentially.
Okay.
Depending on who it is. It might range for, oh, that's not for me, or I'm not funny, or you can't teach comedy. There are a lot of blocks, and that's where the work lies. But it's interesting, those initial blocks kind of mirror the deeper blocks that we have about comedy and how it fits into society and what part it plays and who it's for, because comedy is for all of us. And for a long time, I don't think that comedy's felt like that.
The idea of teaching comedy.
Yeah.
Like, because you said that one of the things that comes up is people will say like, oh, you can't teach comedy.
Yeah.
And what is your response to those people?
I think it would be easy, and I will spoon feed this to you because there are people that like will love it. But I would encourage that those people that have a real deep belief of that to look inward and do some exploration, write about it, explore why they feel that way. Because there's a lot of embedded blocks in having that kind of perspective about something. But then for, you know, the everyday person that hasn't given it that much thought, but just is like, oh, you can't do that. You can't teach that. You're funny or you're not. What I would say to that person is comedy is actually a skill. And for me, when I hear that, it's kind of like someone saying, you can't learn math. You can't learn science. You can't learn how to play an instrument. Like, it is a skill and there is a method. And it is almost scientific, because what comedy actually plays on, deeper than an intellectual response, comedy actually plays on physiological responses. And if you can actually change an audience's state from a state of tension in the body to release, you're actually creating an opportunity for them to laugh. And that's really interesting. And I will keep learning about the science as I grow and as this business grows too, because what I love about doing this for a living is that I get to dedicate all my time to exploring and thinking about this stuff. So, for example, I like to use this as an example. When we surprise someone in comedy, what it does is actually change, like the body actually responds. Often what happens is our muscles jam up. We go, oh, what's that? Wasn't expecting that. Jolt. And then we'll be like, oh, it's safe. Oh, release and relax in the body. And we laugh. So there's actually a physiological response to comedy. When you actually use certain techniques, it creates that response.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I know that part of the thing that has attracted trolls to attack your platform is this belief that like, oh, you're either funny or you're not. There are a lot of big attitudes and big egos that come along into that sort of conversation.
Big
but
ego.
One thing that I find interesting is like actors, creative writers, people involved in a lot of different creative skills. Like, so many are constantly improving their practice through taking courses, through doing workshops, through like this, it's this constant development. Like, you could look at a very talented actor and say like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. And maybe they are unnatural, or maybe they are still training all the time.
Yeah.
This idea that like you're either funny or you're not is kind of like, okay, I think everyone knows someone who's really funny.
Yeah.
But they can't necessarily get up on a stage and move a crowd.
Yeah.
Like, they can't necessarily speak and convey a message with a kind of confidence and the kind of body language that will get a response that will be memorable. So it's like there's a big difference between being funny and doing stand-up comedy well.
Yeah.
So I think it's like when I've seen you get attacked for just like running a comedy course. I kind of want to be like, dude, if it's not for you, then chill. Like, just
exactly
back off.
Yeah.
It's like, why attack people who've actually managed to make a livelihood out of helping people develop all these things and just understand like understand a lot of the devices that are used by people in stand-up, whether it's intentional or not in those cases. It's kind of like when people teach public speaking. Some people are really gifted public speakers, but it doesn't mean that they can't get a deeper understanding of the devices that actually keep an audience's attention and embed thoughts and meanings and feelings into those audiences.
Yeah. And you know, it's really funny, like the more that you work with the devices that I've established my course with, the more you realize how exciting and magical it is. Like, I had a realization yesterday when I was watching, I don't know if you know Taylor Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she's just
She's great.
Oh my gosh. I think her shit doesn't stink. Like, like, she is so cool. And I was watching her do some crowd work. And crowd work is probably the one region that I would say I still have a lot of room to grow in. And that comes from stage time and a few other details. But I am so excited by that. I had one of the most killer realizations yesterday watching Taylor do crowd work, because she's really good at it. And she often puts up reels of doing crowd work. And I realized that the way that I organize writing prompts for my students is I create setups for them so that they can design punchlines and they can see how the setup and punchline come together, and how you can essentially create jokes out of these tools that we use. And I'm every week I'm creating not only jokes with my students, but I'm also creating the setups for the jokes, which is why I absolutely 100% have to understand how to create comedy, because you can't wing that. Every Sunday I have to sit down and use the methods that I teach to create new prompts that are exciting and interesting and fun and playful and educational. So in creating these prompts and these setups, using the comedic devices that I understand deeply, I'm actually allowing my students to have that satisfaction of coming out of every class knowing that they wrote like 8 to 10 killer jokes that day, which is super affirming for any comedy writer or comedian, I've got to say. But, oh my gosh, I'm taking a long winding path to get to my point as usual. So much juicy value. But in creating these setups for these great punchlines and then watching Taylor do her crowd work, I had this eureka moment, which was so yummy. And I was like, oh my God, she's planted this. Like, she knows that if she asks this question with this comedic device attached, her answer is going to sit on the opposite spectrum. So the audience can feed her anything back. But where she's placed the question, she's fishing. She knows the realm as to which the answer is going to come in, which means that she's feeding the punchline. She's created the perfect setup to receive the perfect punchline. And then in the delight of her getting the punchline back from the audience, she can riff and she can tag and she can play. But the beauty of the setup is that she knows the realm that it's going to end up in. And she knows that if she just keeps adding to what they give her, it's just going to write itself. The laughs are just going to keep coming. It's going to be delightful because embedded in the setup is the device.
Yeah.
And I think that is so cool. And I cannot wait to teach crowd work now in this next installment of the course. And each time I run the new installment, I'm always adding value. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got this to add in now. That's fantastic. So it gets better and better. And a couple of new additions to this round of the course will be handling trolls and readying yourself for that, and being indestructible, and also crowd work. We're definitely going to lean into using more of that in the next course. Okay. So
that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Now, can you share with us just a little anecdote about a specific trolling incident that you've dealt with?
Yeah. Oh, which one? I'm looking at the banquet. I'm going to talk, and I had a conversation with somebody in the entertainment industry recently. It was highlighting something that I thought was really important in terms of understanding this dynamic of bullies, hate, trolls, these kinds of things. And I think that what we have to talk about is we have to address the smaller things, and then we also have to address the bigger things. I think that if we have a conversation that's limited to the little incidences that we might experience of trolls, we're not kind of protecting and safeguarding our larger communities from the more dangerous aspects of trolling. I think both of those elements need to come into the conversation, and we have a responsibility to have that full conversation to be able to take care of each other and ourselves. And really what we're talking about at the end of the day is bullying and a social responsibility of how we need to respond to those things when we see them, which we're going to put a pin in that too, because what I've just said is when we see them. And what's scary about bullying is oftentimes we're not seeing what's going on, or we might be seeing a tiny glimpse of something much bigger that somebody's going through. Because the nature of bullying is when you're being attacked is that you will try to protect and defend yourself. And oftentimes this means deleting, hiding, making invisible what's actually happening to you to protect yourself. But in doing that, oftentimes what happens is the larger community actually don't see the full extent of what the bullying is. And we just need to be mindful of that when we judge each other, because I've actually had a big, I've had a year ago, there was a big incidence of just pile on of one attack after the other. And there were actually a lot of attacks that came at me due to people assuming that they knew the full extent of the situation when they didn't, because they couldn't see everything that was happening and they just jumped to conclusions. So when we're talking about smaller incidences of trolls, it might be someone picks on something in your YouTube clip or in your Instagram reel or whatever. They might be like, oh, you look stupid, or nobody cares, or I don't know, something stupid. And if it's just a random troll on the internet that you don't know and it's one incident, it's easy to just delete, move on, whatever. You're not going to let them bring down your day. It's some random dude in his mum's basement with 6 followers that are probably all his accounts. Look at all my 6 friends.
And my auntie who's constantly worried about me.
Yeah. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, which can be more dangerous when you start to get groups of people congregating together to tear someone down. And then what can happen then is you can kind of have a social pile on where people start to get intimidated from the outset and start to almost pile on as a protective mechanism because they don't want to stand out from the majority. And that's when it can get really scary. Sometimes it's just the fear of dealing with a whole large group of people against you, which can feel overwhelming enough as a stand on your own individual anyway. But then sometimes it can go another step further than that, where you can feel unsafe actually. And I definitely had an incident where I felt unsafe about a year ago. when there was a big communal pile-on of hate for what I was doing, in a group where I wasn't present, but other people saw, and they fed that information back to me anonymously. So I didn't even have the security of knowing where this information was coming from, and who was relaying it to me. But I was just informed of just the bullying and the attack and the defamation of my business, and the defamation of my skills, ability, experience, and my character, essentially, and who I was as a person and what I was capable of. So during that week where I was experiencing multiple personal attacks online, I also experienced a hit and run on my car, and my address at that time was available online. And that was really overwhelming and scary for me because like, I still don't know to this day who was responsible for the hit and run on my car, but the way it happened and the way everything just piled on, I did get rattled, and I was scared because at that point I realized, oh, this could have been on purpose with the level of hate that I was receiving. And if it was, I need to not have my address available online. And just even having to ask those questions was really rattling to my sense of safety and my nervous system, for sure. And regardless of whether the hit and run on my car was connected or not, I think the fact that I had to ask those questions spoke to the volume of the bullying that I was being exposed to. And I don't think we discuss enough the impacts of like what bullying can have on a person. But I felt really scared for my safety in my body. And I've been through some trauma, and it was a pretty, so I have some things to compare it to. It was pretty brutal. And what I have learned about the small incidents of trolls is definitely de-escalating is the way to go. De-escalating and processing that in a healthy way in yourself is the way to go. But if you feel like it just keeps getting more and more and more out of hand, then that's when standing in your power and saying, no, there will be consequences to this. If you continue to do this, I will file for defamation. If you continue to do this, I will take all reasonable steps to ensure that you experience the consequences of your actions, is really 100% essential, and really the only way that you can kind of cut through that kind of thing. There's an incredible power to be had in that. Whenever these trolls start to get on the bandwagon and get a little bit too much for me, I just share a public post saying, oh, defamation looks nice today, just to remind them that, hey, I will have a breaking point and they might want to reconsider how far they push that.
Yeah.
And that's my way of asserting my power in the world, to go, I'm a good sport, but there's a certain level as to which I'm going to say, no, this is now affecting my quality of life. And that's not okay. And then, in that same realm, the social responsibility that we have to each other is to be really switched on and to support each other. And so particularly if you see a pile on, it is so not okay to not go to the person who's experiencing that bullying and offer your love and support and your protection. It is not okay to be a bystander that is inactive. And that's my biggest message today, because most of my community have been that. And I want them to know that I forgive them for that. I love them anyway, but I see that, and that is not acceptable behavior. It is not acceptable to be a bystander, because I'm a strong person. I've been through hell and back in my childhood and as a young adult. So I'm resilient. Like, nothing is going to bring me down. And so I could handle what happened to me last year. But what I do know is that what happened to me last year could have taken down somebody that wasn't as resilient as me.
Exactly.
I could have taken my life. And I'm not saying that to be overly dramatic. I'm saying that to be very real. and the consequence to a larger community to experience that outcome from just sitting back and letting shit take place, I would not wish that on anybody. It is always better to take care of each other and stop things from ever getting to that point. It's just an expectation for me, you know? And I think we all need to up our standards and expectations. If we see someone is hurting or someone has been vulnerable to some kind of abuse, we must be present and show up. Yeah. And it drives me crazy because, like, I just don't understand how people don't get that, to be honest. You know, when trolling happens, I see all of these accounts following me. It's like they're checking to see that I'm still alive or something, or that I haven't broken to pieces, but they don't have the strength in themselves enough to actually make contact and say, are you okay? I'm here. You're not alone. We're protecting you. We need to do that for each other. It is disgusting.
Absolutely.
It is disgusting to watch people witness, to check their own conscience to make sure that they're ticking the box, but to not actually do something.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Once again, this whole conversation is wrapped in love and forgiveness. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in my life too. None of us have a squeaky clean record. But we have to change this because we have to do better at caring for each other. 100%. We have to make this world safer for each other. And if we even hope to have dreams of making a more playful, creative, entertaining world for us to enjoy, which is what the work that I'm doing is, what some of us are doing, if we want that, we have to protect it, which means protecting and creating safety around the work and around the people that are doing the work.
Yes. And it's something that I think, especially in the context that you're working in comedy and like different creative spaces, people don't necessarily see enough value in that, or they see it as something frivolous or something that's not so important. But it's like, if the past couple of years has taught us anything, it's that the things that we turn to in our time of need, to feel human again, to feel connected to the world around us, like creativity is a huge part of that. And to make those communities healthier is so very important.
So important. I mean, in those moments, you only have to ask people, okay, close your eyes, imagine your life without television, without podcasts, without films, movies, books, anything creative, any creative expression at all. Strip that away. And what's keeping you going? Because all of these creative forms of expression, what they provide us is joy and is hope. And without those two things, we would already be extinct. We would not still be here. And we have a mental health crisis. We have a mental health crisis in this day and age that can be healed from joy and hope. 100%. Our access to our creativity and the experience of joy and hope will heal mental health. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing in any creative pastime, in any creative job, creative role in society, is that we are in the industry of joy and hope and healing.
Yeah.
And that will always have all of the value.
Yeah. And that is such a huge part. It's like such a massive weapon that we have in this fight for better mental health and just better living in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like we just scratched the surface on this topic.
I know. Right?
So we should do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for these preliminary insights into your experience as a woman in comedy dealing with trolls and such, and look forward to continued collaboration and connection and cultivation.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know, for all of the challenges that we've discussed, it honestly, like, what a blessing to be able to be someone to facilitate joy in the world.
Mm.
And I know that
in any capacity, that's something to be celebrated.
Well. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much for being here. Here.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, we'll talk soon. Yeah? Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and share it with someone else who can benefit from it. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell so you know exactly when I've uploaded a new video. You can also book a free life coaching session with me through my website, leslievcoaching.com, and we can work together online or right here in my studio. Follow me on my socials to keep up with what I'm doing, and please get in touch with any questions, comments, or video ideas you may have. I'm Leslie V, and I'll see you in the next video.